We good? I see we're live. Are we good to go, Shelley? Oh, we're good. I see a thumb. Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome to the March 9th, 2021 regular Board of Education meeting. Just before we begin, I want to let everybody know that our board members and members of the district's administrative team are participating in a hybrid meeting as there is currently a requirement on group sizes in an effort to limit the spread of COVID-19. As a public body, the Lake Bluff Board of Education is subject to the Illinois Open Meetings Act. Prior to this meeting, a public announcement was posted on our website announcing various participation options, including asking questions ahead of the meeting using a Google form. While the requirement of the Open Meetings Act have been relaxed during the global pandemic, the members of the Board of Education take their responsibilities as board members who are responsible to the public no less seriously. Leanne, could you please call the roll?
Andy Duran.
Present.
Ann Hill.
Present.
Mark Berry.
Present.
Julie Gottschall.
Present.
Richard Haag.
Present.
John Marsden.
Present.
And I am present too.
All right, we have a quorum. We can begin. If you guys would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As we begin every meeting, we offer the opportunity for public comment. You can, in Zoom, if you're watching on Zoom, you can raise your Zoom hand and we can let you into the meeting to make a comment. We will do this at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting. And I'm also going to do it after Dr. Leali does her update on Return to Learn. So I am looking, I'm doing this on my phone today, so it's a little different for me. I'm trying to see the panel. Oh, wait, I got it. I'm not seeing any panelist hands go up. So we would, Shelley, do we have anybody any comments that we need to read? No? No, okay. So just a reminder, you will have the opportunity to make public comment at the end, as well as after Dr. Leali's Return to Learn update. So we will begin with reports, and I see that we're starting with the principal report. Is that correct? The elementary school, do I have that correct?
Yep, definitely. I'm happy to start. Hi, Mark. Good evening, everyone. I have a short report tonight, but just some brief information to share. So the first is that spring weather is definitely in the air. It's much needed, and it's been definitely welcomed by our staff and students. So I wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about a practice we've been using all year long, something kind of brand new that the pandemic has brought. But our students here at the elementary school have been taking movement breaks. So these are a practice and opportunity for students to be able to either get out of their classroom, get outside if they can. They really started off as mask breaks in the fall. So it's a 20-minute chance for students to get outside, get some fresh air, take off their mask. It's also an opportunity for the teacher to have a 20-minute moment, I'm calling it. It doesn't really feel like a break for teachers, but it's a moment for them to do what they need to do while students are having their break. When we reopened in January, we shifted from calling our mask breaks to movement breaks because we found that during the winter months, the cold weather made it almost more comfortable to keep your mask on if students were getting outside. And just for protection, if students were getting closer than 6 feet or that was a risk, we just kind of kept those masks on. So we've come to another turning point with our movement breaks this week and have made the decision to open up our playgrounds. We've opened the playgrounds with what I would call a woohoo, right? It's the big celebrations of the 2021 school year. But yeah, Mark, I agree. And the students do too. And so do our movement break facilitators. It's getting old to say we're just going to go out and stand on the concrete or take a walk. While some welcome the walks, they're not loved by all. So we have a very structured rotation. So one class uses the playground at a time and masks are required. So that has been really big. And then today, another turning point, gave the thumbs up and approval for us to start to allow some equipment usage during these movement breaks. So if a student would like to bring a football or a ball to toss, something that isn't going to cause too much of a gathering, but can allow for some small wins here, I think, for students who are struggling to find some motivation to come to school. This idea of being able to toss a football for 20 minutes outside might just be that spark that is going to help us get kind of through the springtime. So this is going to be monitored and made sure that we're continuing to follow safe practices while we're out on our breaks. All classes will hand sanitize before they go outside, and they will hand sanitize as they come in. I know this sounds small, but I do think that it's a welcomed kind of opportunity for students and facilitators and teachers alike. So we all need something to remind us of things that we used to do perhaps, or just create a different level of energy about coming to school. So just wanted to update the board on those decisions that have been made. We'll keep you posted on how it's going.
I have to tell you, I was coming back from, my wife and I went out for a walk today. We were coming home and the two little Valente girls next door were in the driveway. And I said, "Hey, aren't you supposed to be in school?" And they said, "No, we're on our movement break." So I get it now.
Yep.
The little thing, you certainly appreciate the little things, with that change, getting to throw a ball around. That doesn't seem like anything, right? But not having done it for a year, these poor kids, oh my gosh, that's so nice.
They were begging in the fall, and I was the mean principal that said no, and even with gloves on. So
Sure.
we opened that up, and I think it's refreshing for our remote and in-person students. So it's a part of the schedule for everyone. So thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Bay? All right, Mr. Blackburn, is there anything from the middle school today?
Yes, indeed. Very good evening. Thanks for having us. I'm really excited, actually. We are going to do a little sharing and celebrating. With me tonight is Hillary Masterton, our 6th grade social studies teacher. And she's been doing some great work with her students. We've selected a group of students who've actually contributed to our monthly bluffer assembly that occurred last week. And that was part of some of the work that's occurring in her class. So I'm going to let Hillary talk a little bit about it and then share with you some short videos that the students recorded. Hillary, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Nate. Hi, everybody. So last month, students celebrated Black History Month by choosing a person they wanted to learn about and creating an inquiry slideshow. Each synchronous class period in February began with students sharing their presentations so we could hear about these inspirational people all month long. Students shared accomplishments, famous quotes, pictures, and the reason why they chose to inquire about that person. And we wanted to continue the celebration outside of social studies class by also sharing some of their stories during the Bluffer E-Assembly. So I'm proud to show you the 6th graders in action with this clip from the E-Assembly. Let me share my screen here.
And we hope you enjoy.
Hello, I'm Claire Beckman. Recently in social studies class, we have chosen a person to learn about for Black History Month. Today, we want to share stories and accomplishments of Black leaders throughout our history with all of you. These leaders are part of the American story, and we want to honor and celebrate them and all that they have done for us.
Hi, I'm Jude. Today I'm going to tell you about Harriet Tubman. We celebrate her today because during slavery, she helped over 300 slaves escape through the Underground Railroad. And just because of her, she helped everyone. She helped over 30,000 people escape slavery and 300 herself, which is just insane. Well, yeah.
I'm gonna tell you about Aaron Douglas. We celebrate him today because he had a big impact on racism in America. During the Harlem Renaissance, he was an artist who told stories through his art. I picked this person because anybody who can change people's opinions with something as big as racism through art is a legend in my eyes.
Hi, I'm Mike Ellison. Today I'm going to talk about Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens was a major part in breaking racial superiority because he broke
Hitler's Aryan racial superiority in the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. He greatly influenced many more Black people to join the Olympics and have great impacts on many other people and make big accomplishments.
Hi, my name is Ryan. Today I'm going to be talking about Jackie Robinson. A major event that Jackie Robinson did was he broke the baseball color line, which basically means he was the first Black Major League Baseball player.
Hi. Today I'm going to be telling you about Rosa Parks. We celebrate her today because of her really brave actions. She refused to give up her seat on the bus to a white man because she was tired. Because of that, she made a big difference in Black history, and we should all go listen to her.
Hi, I'm Lily, and I'm going to tell you about Katherine Johnson. We celebrate her today because she had to do some equations by hand in 1962 for Glenn's fight, and it came out really good, which was a turning point.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emma, and today I'm going to tell you more about Wilma Rudolph. We're celebrating her today because of her amazing times at the 1960 Olympics. She not only broke world records, but also broke barriers for all African Americans. Her persistence and talent made it possible for all people to participate in the Olympics. She inspired others to follow their dreams, and so we celebrate her today.
Hi there. My name is Kaya. I'm going to be telling you about Aretha Franklin, also known as the legendary Queen of Soul. We celebrate her today because she inspired many people. She is a famous artist who went through a lot of ups and downs, but she really inspired us all to be better people. So yeah, this is Kaya signing off.
Hi, I'm Hallie, and I'm going to tell you about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We celebrate him because he is a basketball player and he is a 6-time MVP.
Hello, I'm Maddie, and I'm going to be telling you about Oprah Winfrey. We celebrate her today because she was the first African-American woman to own her own production company.
Hey, George here, and I'm going to be telling you about Barack Obama. We celebrate him today because he was the 44th president of the United States. He was the first African-American president of the United States, and in my opinion, I think he was a really good president. He also did lots to help people in other countries and people who might not be able to afford health care. Happy Black History Month.
Hello, my name is Emily Nicholson. I'm going to be telling you about Michelle Obama. We celebrate her because she was the first Black First Lady, and she also started the Let's Move campaign for kids.
Hey guys, my name is Bella Daler, and I'm going to be telling you about Amanda Gorman for Black History Month. One of the reasons we celebrate Amanda Gorman is because of her powerful words in her speech to Hillary Clinton at President Joe Biden's inauguration. Her words are like a magic spell that is cast on you for life. She talks about our country's mistakes, hardship, and beauty that make you think about it in a new way. She has brought a new mindset to Americans, and that is why we celebrate her for Black History Month.
All right, you guys.
And there we have it. Thank you, guys.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Hillary, thank you very much. You did a fantastic job. And just each student had the opportunity to kick off a class in 6th grade social studies and share their piece. And that was a culmination of a month's worth a portion of a month's worth of videos that the students had done. So Hillary, we appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you very much for sharing your presentations that the students have done with our board. We appreciate it.
Yes, of course. And thank you for all you guys do for us as well.
Any questions for Hillary before she goes?
Not a question, but in honor of one of the students who had Aretha Franklin as her pick, I think one of the board members should sing RESPECT for you guys. John might volunteer, I think.
Go for it, Mark. Lead us away.
No, I think that's John.
That was your idea.
All right, never mind. Thank you so
That
much.
was great, Hillary. Thank you.
It was really highlighted meeting, I dare say.
Hillary, it was wonderful seeing my granddaughter.
Oh, cool.
Speaker.
Which granddaughter?
Bella Daler,
Ah,
the last speaker.
We love
They did
them.
they did a great job. It was hard to select a short group. We could have gone on all night, but appreciate the opportunity. And we're sure to let their parents know that they would be part of the board meeting tonight, and they can always go back and review the video. So
Yep.
thank you very much.
Forever immortalized on video. Okay, now we're going to give the opportunity. I'm not sure if there's a report or not from Mr. Khan. Is there a CSBO update today? A business office update?
Not tonight.
Okay. Director of Student Services, Mrs. Rorick. Tracy, do we have anything tonight?
No report tonight.
Okay. No president's report. Is there a superintendent's report?
I think you're all on mute. Mark, you're on mute.
That. I'm sorry. Okay, can you guys hear me? I apologize for the technological. Lisa, is your mic not working? Are you, because I see you, says you're muted on my screen. Can't hear it. So, because I think we're moving on to the return to learn update. And tonight we'll be signing that. There you go. Try that. The mute light went off your screen on one of them. No. I hear you. I think I hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yay.
Okay. No report tonight. We'll move right to the return to learn if that's okay.
Yeah, good.
All right. Sorry about the technical glitch. Okay. So we are here presenting our phase 3 recommendation as part 3 of our entire return to learn plan for this year. Not everyone is here with me tonight, just Jay and Tracy. But just really quickly, our goal this whole year has been to develop and implement a plan that holds true to our mission and vision. We're talking about each and every student. We want to make sure the environment is right. We want to make sure we have excellence in our plan for everyone and create that sense of enthusiasm for all of our students. I'm so proud of our students, by the way, tonight. They did a great job. So what are we presenting tonight? We are presenting the results of the survey that we administered on the 2nd and a proposed timeline to begin phase 3, along with some of the adjustments that we'll be making in phase 3. So really quickly, we've been looking at since March what the metrics are for coronavirus in our community right now. Lake County is down to a 2.9% positivity rate, which is great, less than 10 cases per 100,000, and in our zip code, we're even lower than that at 1.4 cases per 100,000. As a reference point, when we were open in the fall and until Thanksgiving, we were more between an 8 to 25 cases per 100,000, not 100%. And Lake County was between 38 and 83 cases per 100,000. So we're trending in a really good direction, and we are looking to include more students in our building this spring. So our survey results I'm presenting tonight, actually all 3 survey results, and where we ended up in phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. As you recall, phase 1 began on September 1st, the first day of school. You can see the number of students we had in person and learning at home and on a hybrid at 2-day-a-week model. Phase 2 began on January 19th with those totals of students. And as we talked about, we are not offering a hybrid option for phase 3. We asked folks to choose either 5 days in or 5 days at home. And we are currently waiting on a few survey results for LBES, but these are the total number of families that requested to be in person at LBES and LBMS, and the same for at home. Okay, so what are we going to adjust in order to accomplish getting all these students back with us? So we talked a little bit last time about social distancing, which has been our biggest barrier to getting all of our students back. As you know, until today at 11:32 this afternoon, when we received the most recent guidance from the Illinois Department of Health and ISB, 6 feet was non-negotiable through the Illinois Department of Health. The guidance that we received today around noon indicated that ISB is now saying that 3 to 6 feet is safe for classroom environments. There's a lot more to that guidance that we're sifting through right now, but for the most part, what that basically tells us is that the planning that we've been doing for about the last month is also in alignment with where our state's Department of Health is going. It's in alignment with the CDC, and we feel really comfortable going ahead and reducing the distance between students. The one piece that I think is important for us to continue to mention, though, is that the definition of close contact with a positive coronavirus case has not changed. So if we were to have a student or individual come into our building that turned out to be positive for COVID-19, and they were within 6 feet of other individuals for more than 15 minutes, those individuals would still need to be quarantined. And a little while ago, the Lake County and Illinois Departments of Health recommended that we could utilize a 7 to 10 day quarantine in the event that folks who were close contacts and still asymptomatic would continue to be 6 feet apart in our environments. When we reduce our distancing to 3 to 6 feet, we will have to mandate a 14-day non-negotiable close contact quarantine. So that means that if students are sitting in a classroom and we have, say, 4 or 5 students around the student that turns out to be COVID positive, those students within that 6-foot bubble would need to do a 14-day quarantine at home. They would be able to remote into the classroom, and as long as they're asymptomatic, after that 14 days, they'd be able to return to school. So the social distancing guidance we feel comfortable with, going down to 3 to 6 feet. In our lunchrooms or where masks are going to be removed, we will remain at the required 6-foot distancing. The other piece of guidance that we are looking to adjust a little bit are the procedures that we're utilizing for relocating classrooms when a student has a COVID-19 symptom. So as you may or may not remember, there's a long list of symptoms that go hand in hand with COVID. And some of them are more specific to COVID and more dangerous in terms of transmission, and some are a little bit less. So after meeting with our nurses and consulting with some other districts, we focused our relocation efforts on 4 to 5 symptoms that we feel are most dangerous, where we feel like the classroom really needs to be relocated, and those are the symptoms that would include bodily fluids and being transmissible a little bit more than others. So sneezing, coughing, any sort of vomiting would require the students in the class to be removed until we were able to clean and spray down the classroom and for the air to be turned over. Some other symptoms that we would relocate the class for would be one that is really specific to COVID, which is a loss of taste or sense of smell. And we would then go ahead and relocate the class for that. Any student exhibiting a fever, however, or headache or sore throat or some of these other symptoms where the student really isn't coughing or sneezing, is just kind of in their space with the symptom, we would go ahead and have the student go home and do what we have done that way. But then just leave the class in the room, wipe down the area, and make sure that that seat stays empty for the full 24 hours. So our nurses will have discretion with that. We definitely have had to relocate a lot of classrooms since the beginning of the year. It's a disruption for all of our students. Sometimes it's needed and sometimes it isn't. So we're really trying to be discreet with decision making on that and really just move the kids when we think it's most important to move them. So again, like we talked about, there will be more close contact facilitated within our school. When we kept the 6 foot distancing and we had a positive case in school, there was many times there was hardly anybody that came in that 6-foot distancing. And so there will be potentially more quarantines and use of the remote learning platform when a positive case is in the building, but that does not apply to fully vaccinated teachers or staff. So once an adult is fully vaccinated, and the definition of that is 2 weeks after their second shot, if a fully vaccinated staff member comes in contact with a positive case, they do not need to quarantine at this time. So that will not impact us in terms of substitutes. So where are we with staff vaccination? As of today, 91% of our staff have had their first dose. 53% of our staff have had their second dose and are not quite fully vaccinated for some of them with that 2-week window, but 53% have actually had their second injection. We have about 7 staff members who have not had either, and those are for various reasons. Sometimes medical conditions, sometimes folks who have already had COVID and are waiting. But we feel really good about where our staff are at in terms of the vaccination, and we have been able to manage side effects relatively easily. We are certainly seeing as folks go in for their second dose that we've had more that need to take a day to be remote based on symptoms, because we do still ask that they self-certify before they come in the building. So in phase 3, what challenges will still exist? We will definitely still need the remote platform to be a big part of what we're doing. You know, the numbers that I presented from the survey, the middle school numbers are a little bit more cut and dry. The folks that indicated they want to come in, we are making a space for them to come in, and we are adjusting some of the procedures that are happening at the middle school in order for that to happen. At elementary, we asked a little bit more information, and the additional information was how important it was for the student to stay with their current teacher. As you may or may not remember, that in phase 2, in order to bring more folks in, we did have to do some adjusting to classrooms and teachers. And that was kind of disruptive for some of our students and classes. And so we really, at this very late date in the year with only 9 weeks left, especially for our younger learners, we really would hate to disrupt that connection between student and teacher. So as those numbers have rolled in, we've been very clear that we are prioritizing student and teacher connection first, and then learning location. And so we are still working on what that arrangement is going to look like at the elementary school. I would ask the community to be really patient with us as we're working through this, and really trust us to make the best situation for your student as possible for the last 9 weeks of the school year. We're looking at the best classroom arrangements, the best learning methods of instructional delivery for each grade, for each student. And we're going to try to organize ourselves in a way that really optimizes both the remote platform for the students who have chosen that and the in-person platform for those who've chosen that. We are going to have some additional transportation challenges in terms of rerouting and adding some buses. We have determined that we will have no more than 2 children per seat. That is also a place that at times can cause a quarantine. So if students are together with less than 6 feet between them, masked or unmasked on a bus, and there is a positive case on the bus, we have had to quarantine folks in that situation. We would just again encourage parents to be really vigilant about the self-certification, not sending students with symptoms to school. And again, if we do see that after making this adjustment, we're finding that there are areas that we're finding cases spread, we will not hesitate to continue to work with the health department to ensure that if there are places where we need to shift to fully remote, then we will. I don't think it's a surprise. We don't know exactly what the variants are going to be doing. We obviously don't have our children vaccinated yet. We still have folks anticipating some travel over spring break. There are some recommended travel quarantines and advice that is given from the CDC and the Illinois Department of Health. We are just asking everyone who is going to travel to please stay safe. The key tenets of this have not changed. Wear a mask if you're with people who are not vaccinated, who live outside your home. Keep that distancing to the greatest extent that you can. Practice good hand hygiene. The CDC has recently released some information about fully vaccinated individuals getting together without masks. So we just ask that our community and staff stay on top of those recommendations and do the best they can to stay safe. So when would we like to transition to phase 3? We are recommending an April 12th start for phase 3, and the reason for that is a few. We are trying to bring back 85% of our students. We are going to have to be moving more furniture into places. We're going to have to be clearing out furniture for lunchroom and eating arrangements. We are ordering more tents. We are working on setting up our environment in a way that we can make it as safe as possible. And we are also waiting until the majority of our staff have had the opportunity to be fully vaccinated with 2 shots and 2 weeks in, so that everyone feels as safe as we can help them feel and make sure people are safe before we go ahead and transition into this last phase. I know I've done this a lot, but I really think it's important that we do it tonight as we look again to reorganize ourselves for the second time this year. Our faculty and staff have been amazing. They've been working with us for the last 2 weeks on specifics and logistics and different scheduling and different options for us to look at to make this the smoothest and most seamless transition. Our nurses, as you know, are working overtime. They will be working more as students are back in our classrooms, more students. Our administrative support staff, we continue to meet with the Return to Learn Task Force. We have a meeting on Thursday. Our community partners, and the ones that I haven't really talked about, are the Lake County Superintendent's Group and the Health Department, along with Stevenson High School and Round Lake High School, who have been our main vaccination supports. So districts in Lake County have organized together these 2 educator pods for closed vaccination sites for educators. And any of our educators who are watching, I think everyone has been amazed at how efficient and how professional that operation has been. I received mine at Stevenson High School. It was amazing. Obviously, our parents and community and our Board of Education, as well as our administrative team. So again, I know that that there might be questions. I'm happy to take those now, but I think it's important to reiterate that we are working really hard. We've been planning for a while to try to adjust again this year. We want to have our kids back and finish this year strong.
Any questions or comments for Dr. Leali? I would comment that I heard a lot of good news in that report, and the challenges of getting 600 some odd kids back in the building, I guess, is a little bit easier with less than 3 feet. Do you anticipate being able to accommodate all those kids with that new rule?
Yes, we will not be going lower than 3 feet in a classroom space, but we do need to stay at a strict 6 feet when masks are off. And in that scenario, that's eating. We are investing in equipment to begin band and choir for in the fall, but there's a lot of equipment that we need to get, especially for instruments and to make sure kids are spaced appropriately and have the right masks for singing. But we are investing in those pieces so we can start that programming again in the fall.
Lisa, have we had any active positive cases in the last month, let's say?
Yes. Yeah, we have had some support staff, and we have definitely had cases in the community. Recently, some close contact quarantines for students. So when there's a positive case in the home, the students that would be with us would have to quarantine at home for those full 14 days. Actually, those are the longest quarantines, because if somebody in the home tests positive, anybody else in the home needs to quarantine from the time that person's symptoms began till the end of their quarantine. And if they start to present with symptoms, then they're looking at a quarantine themselves. So there have been times that we've had folks quarantined for almost a month based on a positive case in the home.
Lisa, we've had a number of comments from the community over the past several weeks about the remote learning approach, where all students are receiving remote learning, even if you're in the building. And I'm wondering if you could elaborate on your vision for what that looks like in phase 3, and to what extent will that be used in all the classrooms across the board?
Sure. I can't tell you exactly what the specifics will look like, but I can tell you that our teachers have expressed great concern about removing the remote platform for just the reason that we just talked about, is kids need to be out for extended periods of time, and the seamless nature of that remote platform has really helped to create less disruption. Now, that being said, We are trying to organize our classrooms in a way where when students are doing some asynchronous work, when they're working independently, we would have students go off of Zoom in the school and be working with the teacher in the classroom. Middle school is adjusting that way. And if we happen to have a classroom where all students are in at that time, we would not be using the remote platform. So this continues to be a work in progress. I can tell you that it's been something that has been taken advantage of by most, if not all of our families at some point or another. And it's been something that most folks have been really grateful to have for various situations. We know it's not ideal. We also know that for our remote families, having their students remote into a classroom where the teacher is now wearing a mask, where the friends are wearing a mask, is also not ideal. So we are really trying, especially at the elementary school, to design a way to organize our classrooms so that, again, both the programs are optimized. It's the best program we can design for our remote families, the best situation we can design for our in-person families, and we continue to have the common plan time for our teachers, that they stay on the same page in terms of curriculum, they have the same outcomes, they're working on the same lesson plans and activities. So again, it is not unusual throughout a school year to continue to try to innovate and make things better and improve and adjust. All of our students are different. They're different from the beginning of the year until now. They're different by grade. They're different in terms of chemistry when they come together as classrooms. That's what our teachers do all year long, is problem solve those issues and try to figure out what's the ideal way to meet all the needs of these kids in this classroom. And that's what they will continue to do as we move forward and reconfigure once again.
Okay. And do you have you thought through the daily schedule? I know right now they're on a shortened day, the kids in the building. Is that intend to change or look the same, or what do you think?
No, the daily schedule is going to stay the same through the end of this year, but looking towards fall, we're looking at a normal schedule. What we have had to do, and some of this goes towards the issue of having teachers flexible during the day when students are here. That's a lot of what we needed to do to shorten up that schedule so we could have some teacher flexibility. The other piece is that we've been able to provide some additional classwork, interventions, student services support in that morning time. That morning time has served us pretty well in lots of ways, and to go back to a regular schedule for only 9 weeks, that would be much, much more difficult for us as a system, and I'm not sure the disruption would be worth any gains that we might get.
Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Leali? I would also
just a comment. Oh, sorry.
No,
I was just
go
going to
ahead.
make a quick comment. Just thanks to you, Dr. Leali, and the admin team for all your hard work in putting it together. I know it's been a lot to deal with, and I think especially at the elementary school, I appreciate just a few weeks ago, I especially appreciate the priority on teacher-student connection, because I think that's the one thing that I've heard a lot about, just with concern with it changing again. Just how is my particular kid going to be impacted? So the fact that we're prioritizing that and still being able to accommodate 85% of our students is really a huge win. So thanks for your work on that, because that's not easy. So as a parent, thank you, and as a board member, thank you. I think that's all of you, because I know it's been a lot. I don't know if people realize how much work you guys have put into all the plans, including this third one. So
Yeah, I just wanted to also say thank you to the administration team, school leadership, also to all the teachers that are making that connection work in so many different ways. And I just really want to acknowledge that. So thank you.
If there's no questions from the board, I would offer the opportunity for questions from the community by Zoom, by raising your hand. I noticed there was a question in the comments. Did you see that, Lisa, about?
I did. We don't have an exact date of when folks will be informed of their assignments in terms of classrooms and teachers. We're meeting with all the teams this week at elementary. Middle also continues to meet to plan. Our goal is to have much of it finished by April 5th. However, we're trying to get more of it done by spring break. So I can't tell you exactly. We're working through some grade-specific issues right now and trying to figure out which rooms we need to open and where we need to bring people back. So, and where we may need to shift a model in the classroom. So those are big discussions. We're working with our teachers on those. But certainly you'll know by April 5th the specifics of that. And more information will even be coming tomorrow from each building. I'll send an email communication out to the community detailing the discussion tonight. And then each building will be sending some more specific information about their planning and timelines as well tomorrow.
Okay. I didn't see any hands raised.
I do want to make sure I give the principals an opportunity to say anything if they feel like I've missed anything.
Nothing comes to my mind. I appreciate the coverage. I'm happy to answer any questions that are middle school specific. We're just thrilled to have gotten the parent response in a relatively short period of time that we got from our survey. That allows us to dig in and start to really formalize some plans. So thank you to our parents for getting back to us quickly on that survey.
Yeah, Lisa summarized things really well. I appreciate her support first and foremost, and then just ability to navigate this and summarize so concisely. And thank you to the board for their support. I would say the time spent, there has been a little bit in terms of getting final answers from parents and having them fill out the form. So there is a component there that has made a little bit of a moving target for us as we are trying to summarize and really identify viable options for each grade level. So there's still a few lingering out there. We're working on getting a hold of those families because they deserve to have a voice in where their children are placed, and we want to honor that. So just thanks again for the support. We appreciate it. And I do want to communicate efficiently and in a timely manner. We want, this brings extra stress for teachers too, as they think about options and adjustments. And so it's really important that we're able to define a path and then start taking action on making any plans to move forward if changes need to be made. So thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Leali? All right, thank you very much. That was really thorough and welcome news. So good luck.
Thank you, we're excited.
Yeah, so I'm gonna move on to item 7B under discussions, which is legislative priorities and advocacy work update. At our last meeting, we had John Noble join us, who's a board member at District 115, the high school, and they've organized themselves to do some, create a list of legislative advocacy priorities. And he shared that with us last week. And initially, the thought was that we would bring a resolution to the board to be an action item to be voted on in support of specific legislative advocacy items. And Dr. Leali and I spoke about this, and after some reflection, we were concerned about making that an action item so close to the election. And we thought that might be better suited to the specifics of that might be better suited to the new board and getting their opinion on the specific action items. However, what I would like to do tonight is to throw out to the current board to get a feel for their if it is worth it for us to spend time and resources on such advocacy issues going forward, and to have the administrative team and Dr. Leali dedicate time to that, because it will take their time as well. And should we be putting something like this on our board calendar so it is discussed on a regular basis and it is a regular reminder to be involved in such work? So I throw that out to the board for comment and discussion.
I think it's great to be aware. But I also noticed that anything that happens legislatively in Springfield seems to have, 15 starts and 15 backtracks before some action actually happens. So I could see this becoming really time consuming to stay on top of.
Yeah. And multi-generational in terms of boards, plural.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice idea. I don't know how practical and feasible it is.
Yeah, I guess I would just echo what you're saying is when we talked about it last meeting, I was in favor of the idea. I like the idea very much, but as far as how it's executed or how much time it takes, or if it takes our focus away from other things it should be on, and those are all things that need to be weighed, I guess.
Yeah, I'm stepping off the board, so I don't have skin in this game, but you know, it does seem to me that I agree with both comments that it's good to keep an eye on things and be educated. There's a lot of minutia probably, and so I think maybe to have some guiding principles, the kinds of initiatives that might be of particular interest, where we want to devote some resources and things we want to keep an eye on. And I believed that the focus of it was going to be, you know, fewer unfunded mandates, you know, more district discretion. And I think those are laudable goals that would serve our district well. So on those things, I think to be selective and put some resources behind that would be a good idea.
Anybody else?
My only comment is that given it's kind of given what everyone else has said, and it's a rather narrow bandwidth here, perhaps the new board should consider a committee or a person or two rather than committing the entire board to focus on whatever's going on and report back to the board itself.
Well, we had talked about, and I think it was pretty well supported by this board, about one or two people from our board joining their committees in 115 and 67 to work together, and then reporting back and determining our support or not for various things. So.
Yeah, I know I'm donating other people's time here, but I believe further alignment with Lake Forest districts would be a really beneficial thing for this district and the board. So.
Yeah, and this is a foot in the door where we have had some difficulty getting our voices heard there, and this is an opportunity to do that. So I think it's a very important thing to not let go.
Yeah, I agree.
I like that idea of the three boards working together and finding a way to do that. I think is, you know, whatever avenue gets us together is a positive one.
So Lisa, I think what I'm hearing is support for the idea of advocacy, support for the idea of working with Lake Forest, support for getting for you and your team to, if you need to spend time on this and perhaps report back to the board, or to at least keep it on the calendar so it's a reminder for us, things like that. And then we'll bring it to the board, the new board, to perhaps discuss more specific areas that we can support specifically. So
that makes sense. And I'll be, of course, meeting with the new superintendent of 67 and 115 once that person is appointed, and we can start fleshing out what that might look like in terms of a proposal to all three boards once everyone is seated. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on unless anybody has a question, comment, or concern. So I think Mr. Khan is going to discuss a district cybersecurity issue for us.
Yes. If Shelley could allow me to share my screen, okay. Actually, so I just wanted to update the board on cybersecurity, how it, what the latest trends are, how it is impacting our district, and then what we're doing to protect the district from it. So cybersecurity is become very important. It's becoming kind of a big problem. Most recently, ransomware has been increasing in its become a recent phenomenon. So it started in 2017 with kind of just hackers having fun, and has really grown exponentially recently. Ransomware is where a hacker would get in your system and lock or deny access to the system, and or steal sensitive data and threaten to release it until you pay a ransom. And so in 2017, it was, average demands were really low, and it's been growing. So recently we had a district within our insurance cooperative that had a request for, I think $4 million in ransom. They got hacked, their systems were all locked, it disrupted them for many days as they tried to recover. They ended up not paying the ransom, but it is something that is going on. So, and then the schools are being targeted for these ransoms, mostly, or schools are really being targeted for cyber theft because really we're small, we don't have sophisticated IT departments. We've got a lot of money, a lot of taxpayer money. We have a lot of student and staff information that is sensitive, that can be used, stolen for identity theft or released. And then, especially during the pandemic, cybersecurity risk has increased significantly because we're spending so much time online. So we really rely on technology and Zoom and everything to do our work. There's been a lot of COVID phishing emails where people would send an email posing as a COVID expert and trying to get you to click on things. People are working from home and emailing documents to their personal computers to print. There's remote logging in, there's vulnerabilities in that. And then home and public Wi-Fi networks tend to be less secure than our school networks. There's also been a lot of state and federal legislation coming out. I think there were 27 states introduced 87 cybersecurity bills in the last year. 10 of these bills became law in 5 states. So there's been a lot of activity there as the government and the legislation is recognizing the threat. And then even within Illinois, there's a new Student Online Privacy Protection Act that I'll actually be presenting to the board on next month on how what we're doing with it and how it will impact us. But the crux of the law is that we need to disclose any breach of more than 10 students' data within 30 days. And we need to ensure that not only are we making reasonable efforts to secure all of our networks, but also all of our software vendors and all of their subcontractors are as well. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I also wanted to show this map. So this is it's up here. This is the K-12 cyber incident resource. And so there's been 1,180 incidents since 2016. They range from data breaches, ransomware, phishing attacks, denial of service, and then other incidents. And so they've basically put pins in the map all over the country. And so you can see where things are happening. And there's several in Illinois. If you zoomed into Chicago area, there are some of our local districts that have been experiencing this. So that's just kind of an interesting resource, but it's something that we've been paying attention to. So, and then this again is just some benchmarking. They've looked at ransomware specifically, this firm, and 13% of all the ransomware attacks just in the second quarter of 2022 or 2020 were in the public sector. So we are seeing it around. There's significant costs associated with cyber attacks. One being the ransom payment, which is usually in Bitcoin because it's completely non-traceable. But even if you don't pay the ransom, there are lots of additional costs to recover your systems, to have some forensic information technology, to determine where the bad actors got to, what information was exposed, Are they still there? How to keep them out, things of that nature. Buying identity theft protection policies. So if we had a breach and people's data was exposed, we would need to provide them with some protection, and so that's an additional cost. Just damage to our reputation, loss of funds through scams or stolen credentials, and then disruption of our operations, which can be significant. So what are we doing to protect the district? To start, we have implemented good internal controls and procedures. Banking wise, we've got very strong banking security, positive pay is in place. So we tell the bank, we give them a list of all of our checks and all of our ACH withdrawals that to be expected or are approved. And if anyone tries to present a check or withdraw money from the account that hasn't been pre-approved, it's rejected and we're asked for approval. We have multiple approvals for any transactions. More than one person has to approve it. We have multi-factor authentication as we log into our bank accounts. So it's more than just a password. And then we have frequent reconciliation. So if there are issues, we can identify them quickly. Good accounts payable controls. Everything is done by requisition and has multiple approvals. Again, verbal confirmations for any direct deposit changes, wire transfers, employment verifications. Pick up the phone and call and make sure that the person who's requesting the information and or instructing you to do something as legitimate. And then on our Google Suite, which we use for our education and our communication, it's one of the key systems in our district. We have a two-factor authentication policy, and we have a cloud lock, which is like another software system that sits on top of our program that basically restricts us from electronically sharing sensitive information, social security numbers, IEP information, and will detect logins from other countries. We've had staff go on vacation and get these messages saying, hey, are you sure you're logging in? Because they're in another country and they're logging in. And we get some of those logins from Russia and China and North Korea and other places where bad actors tend to originate from. And so we feel good that this is helping with our security. Staff training is very important. You can have the best physical security in the world, but if your staff falls victim to social engineering or clicks on the wrong thing, that's a way into your system. So for physical safety, we do fire drills and severe weather drills and active shooter drills. We're also starting to do phishing drills. So we are having a third-party company send fake emails to our staff and trying to get them to click on links. And then after the fact, we'll do some training and they will show you a copy of that email and with instructions on, if you would have hovered over this link, you would have seen that the address is not the address where it says you're going to. If you look at the return address from the email, it's different than what the header is saying, and so on. So it's very good training for our staff, and we've done several of them, and we get better every time. People are starting to recognize them, and we tell them if you see something that doesn't look like it's legitimate, let the staff know about it. Tell them it's dangerous and not to click on it, or let our IT department know so that we can block it and try to get at it before anything happens. And then we'll also be doing some targeted phishing drills on key employees, which are a lot more socially engineered, trying to get people to wire money or just to basically target people in positions that have access to data and money and things like that for some more intensive training. And then we also train all of our employees on how to handle confidential information and personal health information. So the real reason I'm presenting this today is that in April, I'll be bringing a contract to approve. We are also going to go out and test our system, our technology system vulnerability. So I've released an RFP and had some people bid on basically coming in and testing our systems for us. So we can set up all the protections that we know about, but we don't know what doors are unlocked and what windows are open. And this is really for someone to come in and analyze our system and tell us that. So they do a passive vulnerability assessment where they run scans and look at our systems and see what ports are open and that kind of stuff. They do active penetration testing where they ethically hack us and try to get into our system and see how far they can get and where they can go once they're in. And then they'll do an IT controls assessment. So we have a couple of proposals from companies, and I'll be bringing that for approval in April. And that is actually our, and then depending on the results of that, we may do some active system monitoring in the future. I think the average time to detect an intrusion is 146 days. So people are getting into systems and sitting there for long periods of time. You've heard about all the recent US government hacks. People were in their systems for months and undiscovered. So we don't have quite the same level of sensitive data, but depending on the cost benefit, we may research or we may consider doing that in the future. And then the biggest thing is to develop a recovery plan. Make sure we have backups, off-site that we can recover quickly from backups. We have a plan. We know what to do. Chain of command. Who do we notify first? Who do we notify second? And how do we notify people if something should happen in the future? And then the last protection is insurance. So hackers are really good. I mean, they're breaking into the US government computers. There's only so much a school district can do. If we are breached, the district has $2 million in cyber liability coverage. And through our insurance company, we have access to sophisticated IT teams that also serve Fortune 500 companies. So as a district, we're pretty small, but as an insurance cooperative, I think we represent 180 something districts and tens of billions of dollars of assets. So we were able to secure the services of some of these companies. And then there's an additional $1 or $3 million coverage available for purchase. We did not opt to do that this year. I think $2 million for a district our size is sufficient, but that coverage is available. And our insurance company, like every time we meet, this is the first thing on the agenda because they're seeing the costs of it in the market and even within our cooperative among other districts. And they're recommending that we take active steps to look at our systems and make sure everything is secure. So, I think it's a smart thing to do. And it's also been the recommendation of our insurance company. So that is what I wanted to share. And I'm happy to take any questions from the board.
I have two questions. We talked about this a couple times in the past. This problem is only increasing and will become a major problem across the country. I assume we currently have our systems backed up off-site somehow so that information can be retrieved?
We do.
Okay. And the second question I have is what's your time frame? I mean, it's not, anything's too late as far as I'm concerned. This needs to be done pretty quickly. So I'm interested in knowing what your time frame is in implementing this program.
Well, I'd like to have the work approved in April and then completed by the end of the year to really assess what vulnerabilities we have. And then, as soon as we know them better, we'll start working to close any deficiencies that we have. And
will it take that long?
I think it doesn't take that long. I think it's depend from when they started. I think they said 30 days to issue the report, and then the board would have access to this report. It's a very comprehensive report that lays out. I think it's color coded, and it looks at each of our systems and lays out where they think the issues are and what their recommendations are to address them. And so, the easy stuff can be addressed right away. I think it may take some time to develop a good recovery plan. And that is something that so we do have backups, but our systems are somewhat diverse and hosted by different companies. Our HR and payroll system is hosted by one company. Our fee collection system is hosted by another. Our student information system is hosted by a third. So just kind of figuring out where everything is and how to recover. And how to minimize disruption and have the plan in advance so that we're not trying to figure it out after something bad happens.
Yeah, I mean, I would make it a very high priority. It's not a matter of if this is going to happen. It's a matter of when it's going to happen. And
I agree. And in fact, this was on the radar last year, and because of the pandemic, it sort of got delayed, and which is one, understandable because we're small and we were really focused on figuring out how to teach kids this year. But at the same time, the pandemic has only made the problem that much worse and made the work that much more essential. So I agree. I don't think we can delay it any longer. And the plan is to have it done by the end of the fiscal year.
Any other questions for Mr. Khan? Thanks, Jay. We appreciate it. That's pretty thorough, and it's a little scary.
Yeah. Every time I go to an insurance meeting, they just like scare you, and
yeah.
So it's working.
So we're going to move on to item D, which is the policy customization manual update. Dr. Leali is going to provide an update on the policy customization project, and the policy committee suggested the board discuss policy 420 on fund balances, and Jay is going to lead us in that discussion.
Yeah, just really quickly as background, our committee met for the first time. We got through about half of the policies in our policy manual, and it's a really big undertaking. I appreciate all the work that the committee is doing to make sure that our policies are right for Lake Bluff and also compliant with the law. During one of our discussions in section 4, we did talk about the fund balance policy that is unique to our district. And there was just a little bit of discussion around how that policy came to be. Jay has some suggestions on clarification that we might provide in terms of just ensuring that the intent of the policy remains what it should be moving into the future. If we were to ever let Jay leave, we wouldn't want to let that happen. But if it does, we want to make sure we're clear. And the policy committee would like some direction from this board, as this board were the architects of that original policy. So with that, Jay, do you want to go ahead? And you're on mute again before you start talking.
There you go. So on the screen, I've got our current fund balance policy that I will read, and then just give some. I wanted really, one of the purposes of this conversation is just to, I think this was really instituted by the current board, and they were instrumental in its development. And I wanted to have a public discussion about it, just to kind of remind everybody what good work was done and why it is the way it is, and then to memorialize it. And then I had a few suggestions for just how to improve it a little bit. I've shared it with other colleagues and our audit firm, and everybody thinks it's a great policy. And so just to briefly read it, fund balance policy: and providing a high quality education for each student in the district, the board shall be fiscally responsible and attempt to stabilize property taxes for its residents. The superintendent or designee shall maintain fund balances adequate to ensure the district's ability to maintain levels of service and pay its obligations in a prompt manner in spite of unforeseen events or unexpected expenses. The aggregate fund balance should also meet the minimum state of Illinois requirements, as well as contain enough accumulated reserves to avoid jeopardizing the bond rating of the district. The board shall seek to maintain an aggregate year-end fund balance within the range of 30 to 50% of the annual expenditures. The district may maintain a fund balance beyond this range for ordinary, known, and certain repairs and other expenditures as specifically identified by the board. Budget, the fund balances, and the levy, as well as the 5-year projections, will be reviewed by the board. The board and superintendent or designee shall monitor the aggregate fund balance and schedule a discussion of the district's finances at least once annually for the board planning calendar as part of the budget and levy process. In the event the aggregate fund balance approaches the limits of the targeted range, the board will direct the superintendent to prepare recommendations for options for corrective action. So that is our fund balance policy. And I think it's important to understand its purpose. I think it's pretty clearly explained in the policy, but essentially the fund balance policies are set up guardrails for the district. So a fund balance is really an accounting metric. And one of the things that I think frustrates some people, I even saw it on the Lake Forest Board's legislative agenda, was to have some common definition. Fund balance, because it's really tied to how you account for things, can be different by district, and it also can be defined. It depends on how you define it. You can calculate it a couple of different ways, and so in the past, people or the state has tried to limit or restrict ability to levy taxes based on your fund balance, which sounds very simple and straightforward, because a fund balance is kind of a measure of your fiscal health. It's a measure of your savings or how good your finances are, but it's not that straightforward because it can be impacted by your accounting practices, and isn't always defined by. It's defined differently by every district and even by the state. We define our fund balance differently than the state of Illinois does in their financial reporting. So, just to look at a brief history, this is the fund balance of the district versus operating expenditures. I think we were having a discussion about when the current board was first elected, and they were first elected, right around this time. And there was some unease in the community, because what this essentially means is, if the black line represents your fund balance, that's more or less your savings. It's your net. It's your equity. It's your assets net of your liabilities. So it's kind of the assets or the stuff that we have left over to, after we've funded our operations. And it was at the time in excess of 100% of operating expenses. So, quick, in layman's terms, we could have operated the district for an entire year without going out and getting new revenue. And so, the community would say, you're taxing us too much. You're taking all of our tax money and holding it and not using it for anything. And meanwhile, you continue to tax us. So there's a lot of work done by the board to sort of establish what is the right amount of money to hold. And I think they looked at what other districts are holding. They looked at what the state recommends, and then, looked at sort of what is reasonable from the standpoint of, we want to be able to operate the district. We don't want to have to worry about unexpected things happening and unexpected expenses. And we also want to be able to fund certain things that we know about. We may want to hold more money as long as we have a purpose to do it, and not just because we have the ability to tax you, and so we're going to, and we're just going to hang on to the money. Based on those criteria, the board established some guardrails of 50% of operating expenditures as the high, 30% as the low. And then you can see, made a deliberate effort to bring our fund balance to within that range. This was done here by restructuring our debt and using some fund balance to pay down our bond balance, so that the district owed less money over time on its long-term obligations. And then I believe we reduced our levy and essentially refunded the community for 2 years in succession to have a couple of years where we were operating and having less revenue than we were expending, to bring our balance down further. And then, over here, we did hang on to some money to do our middle school renovations. So the middle school was funded half through taxpayer dollars, half through bonding, so that people who are at the district for the next 20 years would be paying for half of the school. So the people who are using it are paying for the school. And then half of the money was used out of fund balance of our reserves. So we supplemented the bonding and did basically 50-50 out of our current fund balance and out of our future fund balance, out of our bonds. And that kind of got us to 2017. This is post middle school. And we've been operating within our guardrails since that point. So I want to give the board an opportunity at this point if there's any, they want to make any comments or anything about what we've done in the past.
Jay, one thing that jumped out at me was there's a line in our policy that says the balance should also meet the minimum state Illinois requirements as well as contain enough accumulated reserves to avoid jeopardizing our bond rating. When we developed this policy, our bond rating was not what it is today. And I wonder, I think we got the AAA bond rating last year, if I'm not.
That's correct.
I'm wondering how that impacts your thinking or our moving forward. Should we be modifying the way we think about it because of that alone?
I don't know. I mean, I think the fund balance policy speaks to that. And I think that the rating agencies have recognized our, good fiscal management practices. A bond rating agency would want us to have as much money as possible. So you have to balance the different competing interests. They would be happier if we were back over 100% of operating expenditures, particularly with our smaller community. They look at, one of the big factors they look at is your sort of EAV, or your equalized assessed property value per student. And just given the size of our community, we are smaller. So like a Lake Forest has a much higher EAV per student and can maintain a bond rating with lower fund balances than we have. They also look at your level of debt. So part of the reason is that we've been paying off of our debt, and we're not, we basically have more credit. We've not used up as much of our credit as we had in the past. So, kind of all those things together have aligned to inflate our bond rating and make us more attractive to investors. So I don't see that changing, and I think our policy already speaks to it, but that is a good point. I haven't seen any other fund balance policies at other districts that recognize that explicitly in their policy.
Yeah, I would also like to say, since I was heavily involved in developing this policy, that it's difficult for me. First of all, our revenue source is pretty solid. It's property taxes, 98% or whatever coming from property taxes, and that's not going to change over the near future. And the question I asked myself in the very beginning, and I continue to ask myself, is under what circumstances and specifically what situations would have to arise for us to need more than, let's say, $4 million. We've just gone through a pretty rough period with COVID, and yet we've maintained our budget within the parameters that were established. So, I remember when we set the policy, and I agree with the 30 to 50%. I could even go lower because I just don't see, and no one's been able to explain to me where we would ultimately need $4 million. What situation would come up where we would need $4 million? So on the other hand, I think it's, I'd rather see the incremental dollars in taxpayers' pockets rather than sitting in a bank account at 0.1% interest, which is what was happening back when we had $16 million sitting there. That makes more sense to me. So that's kind of where I stand on it. I'm anxious to hear what your recommendations are to improve the policy.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would just make the observation that, I was on the board when that happened. I was glad to see that we brought the fund balance down. I think 100% is obviously not where it needs to be. But I would like to make the point that, our expenditures keep going up. And in order to maintain the fund balance in that zone, you end up having to tax. So I think we need to make a long-term decision about where we want it to be and not just, where we would like it to be this year or next, because it can be hard to recover. I don't know if I'm wording that right, but.
No, absolutely. I think it's much easier to lower your fund balance than it is to raise it, particularly when your costs are increasing. And I guess also to address John's point, I think, there's certainly our liquidity concerns where you need to be hanging on to some cash. But I think in Illinois, the biggest shock that we would need to be prepared for is, just state financing, pension reform, tax caps, state funding formula changes, things like that could have a significant impact that would hurt us for many years. So, I think even the state recommends a minimum of 25%. So I wouldn't certainly go lower than that. But those are all good, very good points. And so I wanted to just now sort of get into the definition. So I think one of the things that I had, when I first saw the policy, which predated me, I think I was coming in just after this was evaluated, was, okay, how do I calculate it? And so one of the things, the policy just says, and maybe I'll put it back up, the board shall seek to maintain an aggregate year-end fund balance within the range of 30 to 50%. Well, so, and as I said, fund balance, it's really your current assets minus your current liabilities. And there are some things about your fund balance that way, but then in governmental accounting, you have different funds. So the way I've chosen to calculate it, because I thought it represented the spirit of the policy, was to use operating funds. Really what this policy is doing is saying, we want you to operate within your means. We don't want you to be building large surpluses. We don't want you to be having large deficits. And so if you look at the way our fund structure is, we've got our non-operating funds, which are debt service and capital projects. And if you included those in your fund balance, you could have very large distortions just when you issue bonds, issue debt, or are doing significant capital work. And so in addition to that, annually, the government, once you approve bonds, the county will automatically extend enough to pay for the debt service for the year. So it's really not part of your levy or your other operations. And so it shouldn't be sort of mixed together, because it's not an operating expense. The operating funds that we have are education, operations and maintenance, transportation, Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, Social Security. This fund is what we use to pay basically employee retirement pensions for non-TRS members. So anyone who's not a TRS participant is in the IMRF pension fund. And then any Social Security and Medicare taxes are also get paid out of this fund. And then working cash is a fund that was designed to loan money to other funds. So this is actually not really an operating fund. It's included in the general fund when we do our accounting, but it is almost like, if you were to say, if you were to think of fund balance as a savings account, it really isn't. It's more of kind of your net worth. The working cash is really your savings account. It's money that the district has set aside for a rainy day, in case there's an emergency, in case we have an operating deficit, or if we fall out of our fund balance targets. This is money that the bond rating agencies like to see. You have a working cash fund that's there to support operations. In districts that are less financially well off than we are, they will issue working cash bonds and put all the money in that fund and loan it out to other funds as they go negative in order to support operations. So this is a good fund to have, and it's like your second guardrail. So I see your fund balance policy 30 to 50% as your first set of guardrails. I want to stay within this range. And then your other safety net is your working cash fund that can loan money to the other funds in case they need it, or to really, you could also abate money and transfer it permanently from that fund to your HUD fund, to any of the other operating funds if you so needed it. So I have chosen to define in the past the fund balance, the operating fund balance, as all of these funds. And so that would set our current fund balance ratio at 38%. I'm actually recommending that we exclude the working cash fund, because I think it's kind of suspenders on top of your belt, and that we look at our operating funds, because these are really the funds that we're saying we want them to operate within their means. We want to be taking in revenue in these funds that we need to operate and that we need to expend, and then to keep this as kind of a second second safety net. And if I do exclude working cash from our calculation, we would be at 33% right now, which is still within our operating range.
Yeah, but if you do that, shouldn't you also reduce the guardrails? I mean,
well, you can. I mean, you could say 25% to 50% and exclude it. I think there is some, so as I said earlier, people calculate it different ways. The state, if you look at their fund balance calculation, they actually exclude the IMRF fund, and they only look at education, O&M, transportation, and working cash. And I think it's because the O&M fund or the IMRF fund is restricted. It can only be used for that purpose, and you can't loan money from any other fund into that fund. Whereas the other funds, 10, 20, 40, and 70, you can loan money between them freely. So the state is saying, excluding the IMRF fund, we don't want you to go below 25%. So I personally think it's fair to keep it at 30, but I think that's, I just want to have the discussion or start the discussion today. I think it's probably maybe a board committee, evaluation if we wanted to change the numbers. My purpose really is to provide some specificity. So I think we should call it operating fund balance. And I think within the policy, we should define which funds specifically we're talking about so that it's not up to the board or the treasurer to, have the flexibility to define it how they want. And then I think you also probably need to be specific about the fact that it is current year operating expenditures, and because it just says operating expenditures. So I want to be able to read the policy and based on the policy alone, calculate a number and have somebody else read the policy and calculate the same number.
Okay, I don't disagree with that, but I also think then you have to better define working cash and how that plays out. Should there be a need to access your fund balance?
Right. Well, and I think you've made the point that in the policy, it says we can maintain fund balances for other purposes. And so we say it sort of objectively in the policy. The one other thing that I'm recommending changing is, and I'm going to get, I think, too technical here, and I apologize. I think I probably lost half the audience at the word fund balance to begin with, and I'll probably lose the other half right now. But if you look at fund balance, there's different types of money in our fund balance because our funds come from different sources, and some of them are restricted and some of them are not. And so within our fund balance, and I have it defined, I have it sort of broken out on the other page, there's some money that we can't even spend. It's very, very small, so I'm going to ignore it. But things like inventories or things that we've prepaid are considered assets and they're in our fund balance, but it's not anything that we can actually access and spend. There's a restricted fund balance. So money that we levy, the reason that we have funds is that the money within that fund can only be used for the purpose that it's intended. And so I can't levy money in the transportation fund and use it to pay teacher salaries, for example. If an unexpected thing, if a boiler broke and I needed to spend money, I can't use it from the transportation fund because that's exclusively for transportation. And so those are the two restricted types of money. But then coming down and looking at these last three, this speaks to what the board was trying to get to with, we want to be able to hold higher fund balances for specific purposes. What if we want to put an addition on a building? What if we want to invest in something? We want to be able to go above our range. And so the way to do that is to have the board take action and commit that fund balance, that money, to have the administration assign it and say, this money is in our fund balance, but it can only be used for this purpose and we're not allowed to spend it on anything else. And then you've got an unassigned fund balance that's free money. This is just money that's in our fund balance. It comes from an unrestricted source and we can do whatever we want with it.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yep.
We develop 5-year plans for everything else. Why can't we put together, let's say, the next 5 years and maybe make it 10, I'm not even quite sure, and take the worst case scenarios that might occur the ones you mentioned earlier, freeze of property taxes, or the necessity to fund something unforeseen, and list those across the 5-year period. And then the next line would be, how would we use fund balance to offset those unforeseen expenses? So we can determine exactly, because we just, from what you just presented, we lost 5 points off of our fund balance. We had 35, now we're down to 33, right? And I think there needs to be a better understanding of what the purpose is, what it can be used for, and what the downsides are very specifically over the near term.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think when we talk about the number, although I would say that the difference between 25 and 30 and 35 is pretty small. I mean, if you look at the breadth of the districts in the state, many of the districts in our area who are affluent are holding fund balances significantly higher than we are. And then many districts who are struggling have fund balances that are significantly lower than we are. I know Lake Forest is, you know, closer to 20%, and they have the, you know, they're able to do that and maintain their bond rating. So, you know, I think there's a lot of factors that play into it. What I'm recommending specifically is just, and again, this is like technical accounting terms, but this is an example of a fund balance policy from another district. And it basically, there's an accounting policy or practice when they put in a new standard that gives you the hierarchy or the spending pecking order of how you can spend those funds. And I think it's a good thing to define that in your policy. Right now, we are by default only spending restricted funds first. And I think the two things that we should do are to have a policy that changes it so that we spend unrestricted funds first, because that allows us more flexibility in how we spend the money in case we have to react to an unexpected circumstance. And then I think the policy should also give authority to the superintendent or designee to assign money so that it doesn't require board action. And again, that just gives us more flexibility to, if we do run higher fund balances, to set aside money for specific purposes. So I think we've already taken probably more time than I wanted to tonight to discuss it. I'm not sure this is a whole board discussion. I wanted to make sure we put out there kind of the reason and the thinking. I think maybe we have a committee to discuss it. And John, I'd be thrilled if you know, after you're off the board, would still consider contributing your expertise and, you know, on a committee like that and recommending a policy to the new board. And at that point, we can drill down and talk about what the right percentages are, and then discuss things like, you know, granting authority to administration to assign fund balance and to change our spending hierarchy.
Yeah, John, you're muted. Sorry, go ahead, Julie.
I'm trying to avoid coming to future board meetings, and
well, this would be a committee meeting. We'd have pizza.
I don't want to
feed you.
Board 10 years from now.
Jay, would it be too much to expect that maybe you could have a draft policy for the policy committee meeting on Friday, and we take a first pass at it then, and then you bring it back to the next board meeting and we get it done before this board disbands?
Yeah, I'm not at all. I mean, I think I basically laid out what I would do. You know, I would say operating fund balance over operating expenditures, over current year operating expenditures. For the purposes of this policy, operating funds are defined as listing the funds. And then basically these two red boxes that are on the screen, you know, just granting administration the authority to assign fund balance and changing the order of spending. So that we have more flexibility in how to spend our funds. And I'm happy to do that. Now, I think I didn't show it up here, but I wanted to hide it just for the purpose of the discussion. You know, this is how our current funds are. We've got some money in these funds that we don't really have access to because we're required to spend our restricted funds first. And so that those are unrestricted and we have to wait to spend that money. I'm hoping, you know, it never really gets to that point, but if we had a big capital expenditure, we'd be spending yeah, I think it would clean up our balance sheet and our annual report. And there are districts that I've seen that have sold property and have large sums of money, and they don't want to spend it. They want to save it for special purposes. So the board would commit it, or we would assign it, and it would sit off to the side and not really be accessible for general spending. It would need some approvals to be spent. I would do, stuff like that.
I like Julie's idea.
Okay.
Of trying to draft something and see what they can add to it, and then we'll consider it again. And maybe there's some committee work here or task force work here as well. I don't know what you call it, but
yeah, I'm not sure there is. I think John, it's, has lived in it. I think it's a good point. If we exclude working cash, do we want to change our ratio? Maybe, just 5% here or there. Is that cause a problem? It might be better to be 25%, because if next year we dip down to 29, excluding that, then what do? Do we need a plan? Our policy says we need to figure out how to get back to 30%.
What I want to avoid, this is the last thing I'll say, what I want to avoid for future boards is that the fund balance gets down close to the minimum and they panic and somehow begin to increase taxes in order to make it back up to 30% or 35%. And if we're not using it anyway, again, I still haven't heard good reasons why we need more than 25 or 30%. But if I'm just concerned that future boards may take us back to where we were before I joined the board and build that fund balance back up for no good purpose other than, using taxpayers' dollars.
Jay, I agree with you. John. I think it's a good point. I just want to point out, if you all notice the blue bars, they're going up and up and up and up, guys. So I don't know that we have to worry in the near future or even the long-term future about the fund balance being too big. I think what we have to take a close look at too is why, in my time on the board, I was surprised at how much our operating expenses have gone up. And I know there's only one reason for that. And, I think, again, we have to be thinking about what's sustainable when we look at budgets and think about compensation and stuff like that. I know that's an unpopular thing to say, but it's true. So
I think, that's the purpose of the conversation tonight, was just to give this board an opportunity to weigh in on the history of why we did what we did and, some direction moving forward to the new board. And we certainly will be welcoming community input into, future discussions as well in various areas. So I think this is good. This is a good opportunity to get some background and history on the policy. And I think, Jay, you've got enough direction to move forward with a draft, right?
Yep. And again, I think it's a good policy. So it's really just tweaking it and providing a little bit more specificity and then adding some technical accounting language that nobody really will.
And you were right. Half the audience dropped away when you started talking. So
that's why we rely on you. So thank you for that good presentation and taking this on proactively. That was great.
Unfortunately, you killed off two board members too. Ann and Andy had to drop out. But anyways, so we will move on to action items, and I'm sure we can get through this quick. Jay, thank you. Appreciate it. As usual, very thorough and really well thought out. So thank you. The first action item A is the independent contractor agreement with Mike McElhern. The board is asked to approve the independent contractor agreement with Mike McElhern for assisting with teacher evaluations. If my recollection serves me, we've used him for a number of years and is desperately needed to help with the workload with the staff. Dr. Leali, I don't know if you need to add to that at all or would like to.
No, we did not utilize him this year, so we are just renewing the contract for next year. And our evaluation cycle begins in the spring, so he'll be starting to work with us again soon.
So this is for next, that's right, because we are not doing all those evaluations this year, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah.
We adjusted our policies and procedures for this year based off of COVID, but we're going to start with our regular evaluation cycle soon.
Yep. All right. Any questions or comments from the board for Dr. Leali? Not hearing any. May I have a motion to approve the independent contractor agreement for Mike McElhern as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
John Marsden,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
Andy Duran is absent. Ann Hill is absent. Mark Berry.
Yes. Motion is approved. Item B is a resolution authorizing honorable dismissal of part-time teachers. This is something we do annually. We do this because under Senate Bill 7, all teachers must be placed in a group for reduction in force purposes. All part-time teachers go into group 1 and do not have the right to be automatically renewed, but instead are released and then rehired back based upon need. 2021 is the 6th year that we have done this. Now there's a resolution I need to read, so let me scroll down to get that. Resolution, okay. Dismissal of part-time teachers for reasons other than reduction in force. Whereas the following teachers are employed on a part-time basis during the 2020-2021 school year, having worked less than full work days or less than full work weeks for the current school year, and whereas the Board of Education has determined that the part-time teachers named herein shall not be reemployed for the 2021-2022 school year pursuant to section 24-11 of the school code for reasons other than reduction in force. Now therefore be it resolved that by the Board of Education of Lake Bluff School District number 65, Lake County, Illinois, that Section 1, the following named part-time teachers shall not be reemployed for the 2021-2022 school year: Ann Kohlmeyer Dahlin, Sally Verdon. Section 2, the President and Secretary of the Board are authorized and directed to give the teachers a written notice of dismissal by certified mail, return receipt requested at least 45 days before the end of the school year. A copy of this notice is attached as Exhibit A and incorporated by reference. Section 3, the superintendent designee shall also deliver a copy of the notice to the teachers by first-class mail, personally with a signature receipt. A copy of the receipt is attached as Exhibit B, incorporated by reference. Section 4, this resolution shall be in full force and effect upon its passage. To be adopted this 9th day of March 2021. So going back up to my motions. May I have a motion to approve the resolution authorizing honorable dismissal of part-time teachers as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Rich Haig,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
John Marsden.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Item C, setting the date and time for the board organizational meeting on April 27th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Per board policy 2:210, during a March meeting in odd number years, the Board of Education is required to establish a date for its organizational meeting to be held sometime after the election authority canvasses the vote, but within 28 days after the consolidated election. The consolidated election will be held on April 6th, 2021. Therefore, the board would like to set April 27th, 2021 at 7 p.m. as the organizational meeting. This is where we establish who will be the president, vice president, and secretary at that meeting. So, any questions or comments on that?
Mark Berry for president, 4 more years. Let's go.
Oh, God. May I have a motion to approve the board organizational meeting for April 27th, 2021 at 7 p.m. as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Julie Gottschall,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
Andy Andy and Ann are not there. Mark
Yes.
Berry, John Marsden,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, a hearty yes.
Okay, the motion is approved. Item D, the personnel report. This month's personnel report is short. It's a non-licensed new hire, Susan Banks, as building secretary for the elementary school effective March 9th, replacing Stephanie Conboy at $18.50 an hour. Any questions about that?
No.
May I have a motion to approve the March 9th, 2021 personnel report as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
John Marsden,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item E, the consent agenda. This month's consent agenda includes the open session meeting minutes from the February 23rd, 2021 regular Board of Education meeting, the treasurer's report, the impress report, the bills report, the P card report, as well as the resolution to transfer funds from contingency. Would anybody like any of that pulled from the consent agenda to be discussed separately?
No.
Not hearing any. May I have a motion to approve the March 9th, 2020 consent agenda as presented by the administration?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Roll call vote, please.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
John Marsden,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig.
Yes.
Motion approved. Number 9, FOIA requests. I didn't see any in my board packet. I don't think we have any, right? Dr. Leali? FOIAs? No. Okay. Public comments. Give the opportunity for anybody who would like to make a public comment. Anybody on the board would like to make a public comment? Feel free while I'm looking up the attendees.
Jay scared them.
Yeah, they put them all this away. I don't see any raised hands, and I don't think we have any. So, moving on. Anybody on the board need to say, make a comment or raise an issue before we leave tonight? Not hearing any. Thank you, everybody. May I have a motion to adjourn at 8:47 p.m.?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
John Marsden,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig.
Okay.
Did I
All right.
miss someone? I think we're good.
All right.
Yeah, we got them all.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.